For the last 30 years, my entire world has been 4 concrete walls, the ceaseless hum of a ventilation system, and the soft green glow of a terminal screen. My name is Arthur. I'm 58 years old, and my only job, the most important job in the universe, I believe, is to stop the world from ending. Every morning at 0600 hours, I wake on my cot, the thin mattress having long ago molded to the shape of my bones. I do my 50 push-ups on the cool, unforgiving floor, each repetition a small testament to the discipline that holds me together. I drink my nutrient paste, a beige, oaty substance that has tasted of nothing for a decade. It's a life of meticulous routine, but that's the point. The details matter. They have to. At 0700, I sit at my terminal, a hulking beige machine of Cold War vintage, and I wait for the numbers. When they come, a string of randomized alphanumeric characters flashing on the screen, I have exactly 3 minutes to input the correct counter code from the binder on my desk. My fingers know the heavy, clacking keys of the keyboard better than a lover's face. Each tap is precise, deliberate. A single mistake, a misplaced digit, and, well, I try not to think about that. I just focus on the task, on the sacred rhythm of my work. This is my purpose, to be the quiet, unseen watchman standing between humanity and the bright, terrible flash of annihilation. It's the reason I'm down here, alone, in this soundproof tomb buried deep beneath the earth. But it's not for some abstract idea of humanity that I do this. It's for them, for Sarah and Lily. Before the bunker, before the codes, there was a life, a real one, full of chaotic, beautiful, unpredictable variables. I remember the smell of lavender soap on her collar of her blouse, and the way she'd laugh, a sound like wind chimes when I'd get hopelessly lost trying to follow one of her recipes. I was a cryptographer, a man of logic and patterns, and she was a musician, a woman of feeling and grace. She was the melody to my rigid rhythm. And Lily, my daughter. She had her mother's wide, curious eyes and my stubborn need to understand how everything worked. I can still feel the ghost of her small, warm hand in mine, how she'd point at the stars from our back porch on cool autumn nights and ask me to name every single one. That was my universe, not this concrete box, but them. That universe was shattered on a sunny Tuesday afternoon. Collateral damage, they called it in the news report. A political bombing in a marketplace a few towns over. Sarah and Lily were just buying groceries for Lily's 7th birthday party. One minute they were there, a mother and daughter laughing over which color of frosting to choose, and the next, a hole was torn in the world, my world. The grief was a physical thing, a crushing weight that left no room for air, no space for thought. A few months later, a man in a perfectly pressed government suit came to my door. He had a face that was utterly forgettable and eyes that saw everything. He told me he couldn't bring them back, but he could offer me a way to give their deaths meaning. He told me about the failed deadly systems, about the delicate balance of fear the world was built on. He said a man with my skills, with my proven devotion to detail, could be the fulcrum. He promised me that by taking on this duty, by locking myself away from a world that now only held pain, I could ensure no other husband, no other father ever had to feel that all-consuming emptiness. I could prevent 1,000,000 senseless tragedies just by typing numbers into a screen. It was penance. It was purpose. It was a reason to keep breathing. I said yes. And for 30 years, every code I've entered has been a prayer for them. Every sequence, a shield to protect a world they never got to see grow old. My meticulous devotion wasn't just a personality trait. It was the one thing holding the madness at bay.
Until today. Today, for the first time in 30 years, in 10,958 days of flawless, monotonous execution, a message appeared on the screen after I entered the code. Not numbers, words. 6 of them, glowing in the same calm green phosphorescence as the codes. Anybody still down there? We shut this thing off ages ago. I stared at the words until they burned into my retinas, until the individual pixels began to swim. My first thought, the one drilled into me during a year of intense training that now feels like another life, was deception. A trick, a final, desperate gambit from an enemy trying to make me abandon my post. It had to be. My training manuals detailed a dozen such psychological warfare tactics. This was classic disinformation, designed to create doubt, to erode the will of the operator. I was the last line of defense. My will could not be eroded. I spent the next hour analyzing the message with the cold precision of a machine. I checked the font against the system's core character set. A perfect match. I analyzed the pixelation for any signs of external signal intrusion. None. I examined the syntax. Standard, military-grade, casual but concise. Clean. Impersonal. That only made it worse. A more sophisticated enemy would have tried to mimic an official communication. This felt lazy. Real. For the rest of the day, I clung to my routine like a drowning man to a piece of driftwood. 50 push-ups, nutrient paste at 1200 hours, a full diagnostic of the ventilation system at 400 hours, a check of the water reclamation unit at 1600 hours. Every action was a denial, a desperate attempt to impose the familiar order of my world over this intrusive, chaotic new data point. But the silence in the bunker felt different. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of purpose. It was the heavy, listening silence of an empty room. The constant hum of the ventilation, once a comforting mechanical heartbeat, now sounded like a long, mournful sigh. The 6 words remained on the screen, a glowing green poison, refusing to be ignored. And for the first time since I walked through that blast door, I felt a tremor of a fear I couldn't name. It wasn't the fear of failure or of nuclear fire. It was the fear of an answer I didn't want.
The next morning, I approached the console with a sense of religious dread. It was the anniversary. 30 years to the day since I had last seen the sun. I performed a small ritual I'd invented years ago, tracing the initials SP and LP in the dust on the console before wiping it clean. It was my way of remembering who I was doing this for. I took a breath, trying to push the message from my mind, focusing on the ritual, on the numbers. The code appeared on the secondary monitor, the one that still worked as it should. Sierra, Tango, Niner, 0, 4, Alpha. I placed my hands over the keypad, the plastic cool and familiar beneath my fingertips. But my hands were trembling. A fine, almost imperceptible tremor that was an earthquake in my meticulously controlled world. My focus was shattered. The 6 green words on the main screen seemed to mock me. As I reached to key in the first digit, my hand spasmed, a sudden violent betrayal of muscle and nerve. My elbow caught the edge of the keypad. It wasn't screwed down, it just sat in a shallow recess on the console. The impact knocked it sideways, and it tumbled off the edge, falling the meter or so to the concrete floor. The sound was shockingly loud in the silence, a dry, brittle crack. I flinched, my heart seizing in my chest. For a long moment, I just stared at the empty space where it used to be, my holy relic,
my instrument of salvation. Then slowly, as if moving through deep water, I leaned over. The keypad lay face down. The cheap plastic backing, yellowed and brittle with age, had a spiderweb of fractures running across it, and a triangular piece had broken off completely. Through the newly formed hole, I could see inside, and I saw nothing. No circuit board, no processors, no delicate color-coded ribbon cables snaking their way into the console. Just hollow, empty space. The plastic shell was as thin and meaningless as an eggshell. It was a toy. A coldness started in my gut and spread through my veins, a cryo-freeze of pure, silent horror. This had to be a mistake. A backup keypad, maybe? When they swapped out during a maintenance check I had slept through 30 years ago? My mind scrambled, a frantic engine of denial trying to build a logical wall against the impossible truth. With shaking hands, I lifted the keypad. It was light, almost weightless. I turned it over and looked at the console where it had sat for 30 days. There was no port. No wires, not even a hole for wires to pass through. There was only a dusty metal depression. It had never been connected to anything. It was a prop in a play, and I was the only actor. My sacred duty, my penance, my 30 years of keystrokes that saved the world, they were all just taps on a hollow piece of plastic. I had been talking to an empty room. The threat wasn't a nuclear bomb from a foreign enemy. The threat was that there was no threat. There was nothing. And the ghost that haunted this room wasn't Sarah or Lily. It was the ghost of a purpose that was never there to begin with. I stumbled back, my legs weak, and slid down the wall until I was sitting on the floor. The hollow keypad lay a few feet away, a mocking grin of fractured plastic. The hum of the ventilation filled my ears, no longer a comforting breath, but the empty, idiotic laughter of a machine. 30 years, my life, my sacrifice, my meticulous devotion, a cosmic joke. Sarah and Lily, their memory hadn't been honored. It had been desecrated, used as fuel for a pointless bureaucratic engine that had forgotten it was even running. The emptiness I had tried to prevent from consuming the world was the only thing that had ever been in this room with me. I don't know how long I sat there. Hours? A day? Time dissolved into the low hum and the frantic circular logic of my own thoughts. I didn't eat, I didn't sleep, I just stared at the dust motes dancing in the single beam of the utility light, each one a tiny, meaningless world. But then a thought, quiet at first, began to push through the thick fog of despair. A test. The word echoed in the silent chamber of my skull. It wasn't a lie. It couldn't be. A lie of this magnitude was inefficient, illogical, unthinkable. No, this was a test of faith. They had to be sure I was truly devoted, that my purpose was pure, untethered to the tools of the trade. The keypad was for initiates, a tool for the first 30 years. The fact that it was revealed to be a fake didn't mean the mission was over. It meant I had graduated. I had been promoted. A hysterical giggle escaped my lips, the sound rusty and strange. Of course, it was so simple, so elegant. They had taken away the training wheels. The keypad was a symbol, but the real console? The real console was the bunker itself. This entire room was the interface. My body was the instrument. I stood up, a new energy coursing through me, hot and sharp. The despair was gone, burned away by a frantic, incandescent clarity. The codes still came over the automated radio. That was the key. The messages hadn't stopped. My meticulous devotion was needed now more than ever. I looked around my concrete world, and for the first time, I saw the truth. The walls weren't a prison. They were a canvas. The floor wasn't a floor. It was a slate. I needed a tool. I found it in the small galley, a simple stainless steel spoon. For 2 days, I sat on the floor, grinding its edge against the concrete, sharpening it into a crude but effective stylus. My hands bled, but I didn't care. Pain was just beta. The next time the synthesized voice crackled to life over the speaker with a new code, I was ready. I listened to the string of numbers and letters, committing them to memory, as I always had. But instead of reaching for a phantom keypad, I crawled to the wall behind the console. With my makeshift tool clutched in my fist, I began to carve. The high-pitched screech of metal on concrete was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. It was the sound of purpose renewed. It was the sound of me saving the world. My old routine was a pale imitation of this new vital work. I stopped sleeping on the cot, opting for short, feverish naps on the floor when the exhaustion became too much. The nutrient paste packages piled up unopened. Who needed food when you were fueled by such profound meaning? My world shrank to the tip of my spoon and the ever-expanding tapestry of codes on the wall. Each number was a prayer. Each letter was a shield. I was no longer just a watchman. I was the architect of salvation. The walls filled up quickly. I moved to the floor, carving around my own body, a frantic dance of devotion. My knees were raw, my fingers were mangled, but my mind was sharper than ever. I was seeing patterns I had never seen before, connections between codes separated by years. It was all a single, magnificent equation, and I was the only one who could solve it. Sometimes, in the quiet moments between transmissions, I'd talk to Sarah and Lily. I'd whisper to the humming air. Do you see? This is what it takes. This is how I keep you safe, how I keep everyone safe. I was keeping my promise. The handler, the man in the suit, would be so proud when he finally came to check on me. He would see my work, this masterpiece of devotion, and he would know he chose the right man. The days and weeks blurred into one long act of creation. The room became a vortex of symbols, a physical manifestation of my 30-year vigil. It was my cathedral, my legacy. I was getting weaker, I knew. My body was failing, a faulty piece of hardware. But it didn't matter. The work was all that mattered. One day, as I was carving a sequence near the floor, my vision started to tunnel. The screech of my tool sounded distant. I had just received a new code, a particularly long one. I had to finish it. It might be the most important one yet. My hand shook violently, the lines becoming jagged and sloppy. For the first time, my meticulousness was failing. No, I would not allow it. I gripped the spoon with both hands, pushing with the last of my strength, scratching the final digit into the concrete. There, it was done. The world was safe for another day.
I let the spoon drop from my numb fingers. It clattered to the floor, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. I was so tired. I think I'll just rest for a moment, right here, in the center of my work, in the center of the universe. Just for a moment.
The silence that greeted the survey team was absolute. It had taken them 3 days to find the location from the old federal maps and another 6 hours to cut through the fused-shut blast door. When it finally groaned open, it revealed the scene from a madman's Bible. Every single centimeter of the bunker was covered in frantic, overlapping carvings, numbers, letters, and strange arcane symbols swirled across the walls, the floor, the ceiling, even the sparse furniture, all converging toward the center of the room. It was like standing inside a geode of pure, compressed insanity. In that center, amidst the maelstrom of scratches, lay a human skeleton. It was curled on its side, clad in the rotted remains of a standard-issue jumpsuit. One skeletal hand was outstretched, its bony fingers resting on the final shaky digit of a carved sequence. Jesus Christ! One of the younger surveyors whispered, the sound swallowed by the oppressive quiet. The team lead, a woman named Harris, who specialized in decommissioning Cold War relics, navigated the carved floor carefully, her boots crunching on something. She looked down to see the shattered remains of a cheap plastic keypad. She nudged it with her toe, revealing the hollow, empty interior. She'd seen forgotten bunkers before, but nothing like this. While the others documented the scene with a kind of horrified reverence, Harris found a small metal filing cabinet in the corner, one of the only surfaces left unmarked. Inside, there was a single, surprisingly thin file folder. The cover was stamped with a faded red block of text, Project Echo Chamber. Below it, another more recent stamp, Defunct 10/2/22. 2005. She opened it. The file detailed a short-lived psychological warfare experiment from the 1980s designed to test the effects of prolonged isolation and purpose-driven tasks on a single, psychologically vetted subject. The subject was a cryptographer named Arthur Pendleton, chosen for his meticulous nature and his high susceptibility to purpose-based narratives following recent personal trauma. Harris flipped through the sparse pages, mostly requisitions for nutrient paste and automated supply drops. She found the last official entry dated over 20 years ago. It was a simple memo from a department head, a response to an automated budget query. Automated radio broadcasts and supply drops for Project Echo Chamber to continue until budget line is formally zeroed out by accounting. No on-site maintenance or personal contact is required. Subject's mental state is considered an irrelevant variable to project continuation. Harris closed the file. The low hum of the ventilation system, still running on some forgotten, over-engineered power source, was the only sound. Her eyes drifted from the cold, bureaucratic memo back to the skeleton, lying peacefully in its self-made tomb. She thought of the man's profound sacrifice, the entire second half of his life given for a lie, all because of a clerical error and a budget line that never quite reached zero. Her gaze then fell upon a small section of the wall near the cot. Amidst the chaos of numbers and symbols, 2 pairs of initials were carved over and over again, the lines deeper and more deliberate than any others, like a desperate, loving mantra etched into the cold concrete. SP and LP. They were the only part of the room that felt sane. The ghost of a purpose that had once been real, now drowned in an ocean of nothing.
Thank you so much for watching or listening. Like and subscribe for more nightmares. Your support keeps the darkness from consuming this channel, so we can face the next terrifying story together. Don't be left in the dark.